Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you to the Spotlight Session Masterclass with the Legend. We come to this grand finale session of INFOCOM 2017. This is the Spotlight Session, a masterclass with the legend Ustad Zakir Hussain, internationally acclaimed tabla virtuoso in Indian classical music. This special session is brought to you by Life Insurance Corporation of India. On behalf of INFOCOM, I will invite Mr. A.K. Sharma, Regional Manager Marketing East Zone, Life Insurance Corporation of India, to kindly do the honors of introducing Ustad Zakir Hussain and take this session forward. But before I call him onto the dais, I will say a few words to introduce Mr. A.K. Sharma. Mr. A.K. Sharma is a direct recruit officer in LIC of India with over 31 years of experience in various key positions. He has served for over 4 years as CEO and director of LICHFL Asset Management Company Limited, and he's currently working as the Regional Manager Marketing in Zonal Manager Cadre, responsible for marketing activities in Eastern Zone. A very warm welcome to you, sir, and I request you to kindly come onto the dais and take the session forward. Please put a hand together for Mr. A.K. Sharma.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of excitement today. LIC is delighted to host this special spotlight session, Masterclass with the legend Ustad Zakir Hussain ji, an internationally acclaimed Indian classical musician known as the chief architect of world contemporary music, and a more than a name is synonymous with the tabla. He is none other than Ustad Zakir Hussain ji. He is a singer, actor, director, and whatnot. He doesn't need any introduction, but I feel it is an honor and privilege for me to get this rare opportunity to talk about an Indian musician who started touring as a child prodigy at the age of 12 and today plays more than 150 concerts in a year across the globe. He who has been instrumental in taking Hindustani classical music to the world also holds some of the highest civilian honors in India, Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan. He was also presented Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 1991 by the President of India. He has been a recipient of not one, but 2 Grammy Awards. The first ever Grammy for the Best World Music Album, Planet Drum, and again the 51st Grammy Award in 2009 in the Contemporary World Music Album category for his collaborative album Global Drum Project. One of the most popular, loved, acclaimed, and revered artists in the country and beyond, has also received the National Heritage Fellowship, USA's most prestigious honor for a master in the traditional arts. He was awarded Indo-American Award in 1990 in recognition of his outstanding cultural contribution to the relations between USA and India. Today, we'll all have the rare privilege to hear from Ustad Zakir Hussain himself about his life and learning. And later in the evening, we will hear his music live, a rare moment which we have been eagerly awaiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Ustad Zakir Hussain ji onto the stage. Ustad Zakir sir.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. After you. No. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had dinner and a glass of wine and whatever else, and left some leftovers for us to have later. Thank you very much for coming. I just want to request that this thing about being an ustad is something that I don't feel I qualify. Nobody does, actually. Life is a learning experience. Every day you get up and you walk through your day, you learn something new. So if you are going to learn every day, there's no point in calling yourself a master or an ustad or anything. So I never believe in that. So please consider myself your friend and just call me Zakir, Mr. Sharma. If I call you AK, you can call me.
Yes, you can call me AK, but
then you can call me ZH. If that works for you, that's good. I mean, in the rest of the world, for some reason, they don't say Z. In Bengal, they say Jed, or they say J. The great Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, the Sarod maestro, who I played with and toured with for many years, he never figured out that he should call me Zakir. He always called me Jakir. I mean, it happened to be what this part of the world did. In Maharashtra, they call me Jakir. With real feeling, Jakir. But in the rest of the world, I'm Z, Mr. Z. So you can call me Z, ZH, or ZH, or Zakir, and I'd be very happy if that works out. I mean, we are friends, right, I presume? Yes. Are you younger than me or older than me?
I think a crowd will be able to tell better than who looks younger, I think. You are considered to be one of the most sexiest person. I don't know.
Somebody,
this is what people say. See what
somebody,
now the people.
Somebody was on something when they decided that. I don't know about this sexy business. It's growing out of proportion these days, no?
Yeah. Anyway, welcome and a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you ever so
Thank
much.
You so
I mean,
much.
I'm marveling at your ability to be able to sit through hours and hours of people speaking and being able to focus enough to be able to decipher what's going on and what's being said and the meaning behind it and everything. So, my hat's off to you, because we struggle when we are in Indian music festival concerts. And so you're listening to an artist, then that artist finishes, then another artist comes and goes through the whole process, then the third one. So the thing is, the process remains the same. When a sitar player comes, he will play his alap, jod and jhala, and the tabla player will be sitting there chewing his pan. And this happens regularly. And so this happens through many artists. So it becomes very difficult to keep focusing on listening and watching and seeing all the subtle nuances of the music being projected. And so in that sense, I really marvel at your ability to be able to focus from morning till night on and then having to be subjected to me speaking to you. It's just so amazing. Thank you very much for doing that.
So what should I call you now? Zakir sir.
What should we talk about?
I'll call you Zakir sir.
Well, first thing we should talk about is with the sound person, if they are around.
Sound, please.
Please make it possible for Mr. Sharma's voice to be heard on the stage, because I'm hearing him from back there somewhere. And so the definition or the questions are getting lost a little bit. So, is that possible?
Hello.
Yep, I'll just have the monitor placed in front.
Yeah, please.
You don't have to place it in front. Back here is fine. If both of us can be just piped in here.
Okay.
Or you can arrange for a lapel mic.
It's okay.
If anything is
Sir, it's okay. That was very well done. Up and down. Fabulous. Thank you. Okay, can you say something?
Yes. Hello. Yes.
There we go.
Thank you so
Me
much.
too.
Yeah.
Hello, 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay. Okay, you got it.
Yeah. So, Zakir Saab, your journey started the day you were born.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that the day you were born, the first words by your father was something like something related to music only, nothing else. What was that?
Yes, the day I was born wasn't the day I actually heard anything, but I'm sure I heard other kids crying and all that stuff, but I was born at a very difficult time for our family. My father was very sick, and the presumption was by everybody that these are his last days. And so people would come visiting and to see him, pay, last time, whatever it was, and he was totally gone in that situation. And I was born, and at that time, he had just finished like a few months before doing music for a film. And the film was called Bewafa. And there was Ashok Kumar, Nargis, and Raj Kapoor were the actors in the movie. And he had done the music for the film. And I was told that one day Nargis would come to pay her respects, Raj Kapoor would come and so on, because he was going. And so that's what was happening. And then I was born. And my mother decided that I was bad luck child. And please don't mind, it feels like an economy class airline seat, no leg room, but it'll be okay. So I was born, and my mother felt that I was not a lucky child because she was losing her husband. So I was not fed by her, breastfeeding. So a best friend of hers actually was the first one who was like a surrogate mother to me. And so for first 2 or 3 days, I wasn't even brought home. So when I was finally brought home, my father was on bed, kind of almost semi-conscious. And the tradition is, at least in our world, that when a child is brought home, the first thing that happens is the child is handed to the father, and the father must recite a prayer in the child's ear. And that will be the first thing that the child should actually hear in terms of focused hearing. So my father was given me, and he was, whatever state he was in, he put his lips to my ear, and instead of a prayer, he recited tabla syllables, rhythms. And my mother thought that he was maybe in some hallucinating thing or whatever. She said, no, you're supposed to do tabla bows. And he just said to her, but I am praying. This is my prayer. And this is what I want him to hear, because this is going to be his prayer, his mantra. So that is the first thing that I heard in my ear was tabla, but in a form of a mantra or in a form of a prayer. And that became his routine. Every day he would hold me in his arm and he would sing rhythms in my ear constantly. And I don't know what the connection was, but I was born, I was put in his lap, he started singing rhythms in my ears, and he came back. He started getting better. And so there must have been something that happens in that, that we were connected, that the life that was inside of me was also the life that came back to him. And the music that was in him was transmitted to me in that manner. So by the time I was 3 years old, I already had all these rhythms in my head, and major confusion was taking place. All the stuff was there and I didn't know what to do with it. What is this? What's going on? So that's what it was.
But was your mother having the same kind of hopes from you that you will become tabla player, or was there some confusion, or she wanted you to be somewhere else?
Well,
So
obviously my father knew that this is what I was going to do. I was going to play tabla. My mother, however, has had other ideas, as mothers or other parents did in those days. I mean, music in our days, when I was born, I mean, I guess I should tell you, I'm 66 years old. And so when I was born and I was starting to play a little bit, music was considered not just second, but a third-class profession. Musicians were like, okay, so you play tabla, but what do you do for a job? That was the normal line spoken. Music was not considered to be an honorable profession at that time. And musicians were people who were not fit to interact with socially. They were fine to be able to be hired to sit in a corner and play some music, or go listen to them in a concert and hear them. But as far as being socially acceptable, as far as being people who were representative of a particular profession, that was a respectable profession to be had or to be part of, was not the case. So my mother felt at that time that I should not be a musician. And she had seen my father being one of the great performers of his time, living in poverty. We were living in one room. That's how it was in those days. Even though he was doing music for films, he was still living in a room because he was hired. You may not know this, but in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, there were film houses like Bombay Talkies, Filmistan, Filmalaya, and all these. These were big studio houses, and they all had their roster of artists. So they all had actors who were contracted on salaries to be their actors. So there would be actors who would be in a movie, and the movie would be biggest success and making zillions of rupees, but those actors were on salary. And they were making like 1,000 rupees a month or something like that for being actors in the movie. Similarly, my father, who was a music director for Mohan Studios, he was on salary. He was making something like 350 rupees a month and doing music for films for Mohan Studios. Occasionally, he'd play a concert and make 50 rupees or 70 rupees, something like that, because music was not an honorable profession. It was a second, third-class profession. So even though an instrumentalist would make, say, 500 rupees for performing, someone like Vilayat Khan Sahab or Ali Akbar Khan Sahab would make 500 rupees to play a concert, the tabla player would make 50 rupees. There was that much of a gap between. So tabla player was even more like a second-class profession in the music profession, which was already a second-class profession. So the level was way down there. I mean, you know. So the musician lived in a garbage can, but who lived below? A tabla player. It was something like that. So therefore, living in a small place, we were poor people. So my mother always felt that I should not be a musician. I should be either a doctor or an engineer or something like that. So bless her soul, because that's a great thing that happened, because she made sure that I went to a regular school, that I studied. She knew that I would need these abilities to be able to speak in different languages, express myself, find a way to be able to convey what I'm thinking. And she knew that my father was not able to do that, but she wanted me to have that ability. You know, I was the only kid in our neighborhood who went to an English medium school, which is amazing. I mean, I'm talking about 1957, 58, that time. Yes, we were only 10 years into our independence, but that's how the neighborhoods were. I was in an Islamic neighborhood, so they went to a madrasa or they went to a Urdu medium school, but nobody thought about it. I mean, when I was sent to St. Michael's High School, the women of the neighborhood came to my mother and said, "What are you doing? Your child, you're sending him to a school run by a church. They are going to, turn him into a Christian or whatnot," and everything. That's what was happening. So she made sure that I would go to a school. Her idea was that I would become a doctor or an engineer. But after I had made my first 1,000 rupees or so, she was convinced that maybe he should play tabla. But he should go to school. That was important.
Yeah. You started as a child prodigy at the
So they
tenderest
say, I don't know if
yeah.
there's such a thing.
And for a tabla player, hands are the most important thing.
Yeah. So you have to have a few of them.
Yes. So did your father allow you to play some games at the time?
Of course, I was a cricket fanatic like all Indian kids are. I mean, in Bengal, you are soccer fanatics.
Yeah.
But unless it's Dada Ganguly playing cricket or something. But most of us in other part of the country, that part, which is not Bengal, we were cricket fanatics. And I grew up playing beach ball cricket, that was normal. And then I started playing for my school. So I played school cricket. I broke my finger. That ended any hopes of me being able to keep wickets for India. I was a keeper. So I actually was chosen as one of the 32 school kids to go to a camp to see if I would go any further. But my father effectively put an end to that. He said, no, this is not what's going to happen. And one of the sponsors, by the way, of our gathering is Kinley Water Supply. This is one of those commercial breaks. You must have noticed that the bottle was put in front of the glass, not behind the glass. So I thought I'd acknowledge that.
Since I am from LIC, I place it at the back side.
Yeah, of course, that's what you would do, but but I know where my glass is watered from, so as where the toast is buttered. But anyway, so I was playing cricket and I broke my finger one day, and then my father that was the one day that even though I was in pain, that my father slapped me. The one time in his life that he ever hit me was that time. And he was so angry. And then afterwards, he didn't say a word, he went away. He probably was not, he was a very mild-mannered person. So you never saw him get angry or anything. So that's what happened. And so he retreated. He didn't want that side of him to be the one that he and I would interact with in mind. That side, that ugly side. He didn't want that. So he went away. And then later on at night, he, at dinner, fed me with his own hand, eat this. And he very quietly told me that, look, you have a different destiny than being a cricketer. And even in those days, the cricketers didn't make much money anyway, not like Virat or Dhoni or Sachin have just made. I mean, they barely had enough money to provide themselves with a kit. Kirmani or Sunny Gavaskar and all that, they grew up with, patched up gloves and patched up pads and stuff and so on. I've seen it. And it's very different now. But so it wasn't much of a difficulty for him to convince me that, okay, so I should play tabla. What helped was that when I was 12 years old, and he took me to a concert. I have to tell you this because this involves a musician from this part of our great country. He took me to a concert and I went with him, and instrument was put on the stage like it is now, and he tuned it, ready. And then when it came for the time for the performance, it was a small performance, an intimate one for the Press Club of India. in Mumbai at Churchgate. And when the time came for the performance, he walked away from the stage and he told me, okay, now you sit and play. So obviously that was my coming out party. And it happened to be that the person I was supposed to play with was one of the greatest musicians of all time, anywhere in the world, who came from this earth right here in Bengal, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. And I was 12 years old, and I was asked to sit and play with him. And I was like, you know, I was looking for the bathroom at that time because I didn't want to do it in my pants. So anyway, that's when I played with him, and believe it or not, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, when the concert was over, and I don't know, I must have done okay because I was allowed to play through the concert. And Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, at that point, in those days, what was 1963 or something, he gave me a 100 rupee note. 100 rupees. So that note still sits in a safe in our house. So that convinced me that, it's okay. I mean, I could be a tabla player, make some money.
I heard that you went to replace your father sometime.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then somebody didn't pay you anything and he ran away, and then you...
Oh yeah,
what
well,
was that?
That
Can you
happened
share
in the
that?
music world a lot. You came and you played a concert and the organizer was already gone with the ticket sales, whatever that were, minuscule, and you were left to fend for yourself. It did happen in those days. But my routine was, after having played with Ali Akbar Khan Sahab and, you know, like, oh, okay, I can do this. I can actually make some money doing it. So I started to be a little sneaky. Being the only kid in the block who could read and write English, I was frequently approached to fill out forms for people in the mohalla and stuff. And I was also designated the secretary, you know, of my father, to be able to write, answer the letters that came for concerts. Shantanu ji, rakh dijiye kya hai? Mujhe mere se ham kalam rahiye. If you see me on the screen, you will lose Mr. Sharma. It's together. Okay, so I would answer the letters, you know, whichever way my father wanted me to. Likh do, main aa sakta hoon, and so on and on. But then there were times when he was not there. He was gone to play a concert or something with Ravi Shankar ji and so on. They had started to play and tour together. And then the letters would come, and then my mother would say, likh do, nahi hai, whatever. But one day, a light went on in my head. I don't know. It was a wrong kind of light or right, but it did. And so I said, So I wrote, Ustad Allah Rakha is not available due to other commitments, but his son is. It said, suddenly the light came on, why not? You know, let me write it. What's going to happen? At the most, they'll say no. And most of them said no, but some crazy ones who didn't know any better actually said, okay, send his son. So that's what happened. And then I was going to school, so we didn't have enough money. So the pocket money that my friends and I had, we would get all that together. And then I would buy a third-class ticket to wherever the concert was. And then in a school bag, I would secretly put clothes. And some other friend would bring a T-shirt, another friend would bring a shirt, another friend would bring a pair of pants in their bags, and then the books will be exchanged with those clothes in a canvas bag, and so I would have that. And then I would go off to the station and go on to play in this place that I've never been to before or barely even know about. And believe it or not, I was 12 or 13 years old. I would be going from Bombay to places like Patna. It was a long ways away. I didn't realize that. I would just buy a ticket. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to get off at Mughal Sarai on this Kolkata mail. and then from there take Tufan Mail to go to Patna. And I didn't realize how far it was. I just accepted it. And so I would get into the train and I'm going, and then suddenly it's getting night and it's getting dark, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm going far away, and my mother is going to miss me. I haven't told her I'm not getting back in time, back home. So it was stuff like that was going on in my head, but that's what happened. I ended up in Patna, and then I'm off on the station waiting in my school uniform. Blue pairs of shorts, white shirt. I had taken the red tie out. So that was the only change. And I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and nobody's there to get me. And there are these people walking around and doing whatever they are doing. And suddenly, one person comes to me and points to the bag and says, "Is there a tabla in there?" And I say, "Yes." "So are you Zakir?" "Yes." And then that person kind of turned around and walked away for a little while and came back and said, "Okay, come with me." It turns out that that person was the organizer, but he was expecting the son to be a big, older person. And so when he first realized I'm Zakir, he didn't know how to deal with that. So he walked away. And I'm sure he was halfway out of the station saying, "I'm just going to leave and not worry about this." But then something appealed to him and he came back, and he didn't want to leave me there, so he said, "Okay, come with me." And then he booked a trunk call to the post office in Mahim from the post office in Patna Junction, so that he could let my mother know that her son is here. In the meantime, there was major panic in Mahim, where I lived. I mean, people were running around helter-skelter looking for me. Police was putting their sticks in the seawater, like what's happened, and all sorts of chaos was happening. And so my mother finally found out from that phone call. The post office guy went to the house and said, "Your son is safe in some place called Patna." He didn't even know what Patna was. So anyway, Patna, and my mother was, "Patna, where is Patna?" So all that happened, and then Mr. Bipin Bihari Sinha, that was his name, was the organizer, let him know, let the postman, and so all was good. But when I got home, I got it. I was in the doghouse for a long time. She was very upset. She hit me with the stick, and all sorts of stuff happened. But she calmed down when I took out 200 rupees from my pocket. And I gave her 200 rupees, and that changed. The shades from being red went gray.
By the age 18, you moved on to USA.
Yeah.
And we heard that you wanted to be a rock and roll star. So how does this happen that you became Ustad?
Well, I thought that if I couldn't be a cricket star, I should be a rock and roll star, or any kind of a star. But because being a tabla player, you were still a second-class citizen in the world of music. So you needed to be a big artist. I have to, first of all, thank Bengal. And I do that because this was a cultural capital of India, and it still is in many ways. I remember as a 6, 7-year-old kid coming and staying with our friends on Hindustan Road, parallel to Rash Bihari Avenue, as a 7-year-old child, with my father, and seeing, on an average, at least 4 concerts a night. In those days, in 1957, 58, every musician that was of any status in India was here in Kolkata in the winter time. And there were festivals happening all around the city. And I remember my father and Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, the great singer, would perform somewhere in, On the other side of the Howrah Bridge somewhere. Huh? Not Dover Lane, not Dover. Uttarpada. Uttarpada. So you're performing in Uttarpada, getting into a car, running across, and then performing in Behala or somewhere, running to perform at Dover Lane, in the middle stopping at a dhaba to have some tadka dal and roti or something, and then running to play in Dover Lane, and then playing the last thing at 7 in the morning or something at Mahajati Sadan, another auditorium, which was one of the old auditoriums. And I'm running around with them as a 7-year-old. And I tell you, in that 1 month and a half living here in Calcutta, I learned so much about music and so much about being able to, how to perform, how to deal with a musician, all this energy sapping stuff that happened, and how to focus on being able to gather whatever's left inside of you to deliver a magnetic and electrifying performance. It was amazing. Bengal was a place. But one of the main reasons I'm thanking Bengal is because Bengal was responsible for me being able to leave India and go abroad. I wasn't wanted here or anything. It wasn't that. But Ali Akbar Khan Sahab's son, Ashish Khan, needed a tabla player to travel with him to Europe. And because Ali Akbar Khan Sahab and Ravi Shankar ji happened to be the student of the same teacher, and Ravi Shankar ji had Allah Rakha Khan Sahab, my tabla player, playing with him, my father playing with him. Ashish was given the advice that you should take Allah Rakha ji's son on tour with you to Europe. And Ravi Shankar ji was the one who suggested that. So Ashish is the one who came to Mumbai and talked to my mother. My father was already in America with Ravi Shankar ji and said that please send your son with me on tour. And I was in my first year of college at that time, really enjoying my time in the canteen at the college. All of us did that, right? We spent our time in the canteen, we ogling and, whatever. We did all that. So I was doing that, really finally discovering where my passion lied or lay. Ashish asked my mother, and my mother said, okay. For some reason, she said it was okay. So in month of January, before I even finished my year at the college, I found myself on a flight to London. And I got to London, and Ashish met me, and then we played a concert at Queen Elizabeth Hall in London. Then we went to Paris, and then we went to Germany, various places, Berlin and stuff. And I arrived in Munich, and I got a phone call. In Munich, it was Ravi Shankar ji calling. He called Ashish and me, and he said to Ashish, Shuno, Zakir ke New York ke patho, or something. And something like that happened. আমি একটু বাংলা বলতে পারি, বেশি জানি না। চলবে তো? ঠিক আছে। So Raviji called and he said to Ashish, please send Zakir to New York because Allah Rakha ji has to go back to India. There was something going on, and these 5 concerts had just come up, but my father had committed to being in India at that time, so he had to go. So my father and Ravi Shankar ji discussed it, and they decided that it was time to unveil me and put me in front of American audiences. So Ravi Shankar ji said, send Zakir over. And in those days, believe it or not, an 18-year-old could walk into American embassy with no papers, no press reviews or CDs or whatever, anything, and hand over his passport with no return ticket or anything, and tell the visa officer, I want a visa to go to America. And he will say, for how long? And he will say, whatever, a month or 2. Okay, just like that. And I would have a year's visa, 18-year-old, no issues in those days. No appointments, no eye scans or whatever, biometrics or anything. So you could do that. So I went and did that in Munich and went to New York. And I played with Raviji in New York, a concert, and then 3 other concerts. And then Raviji said, you know what, there's an offer for an Indian music teacher to go as an assistant professor to University of Washington in Seattle to teach in their ethnomusicology department. So I've spoken to your father, and your father agrees that you should go do that. And there is double thing here. You can not only go teach, but you can also finish your studies, because you had to leave the college early. So I said, okay. So I ended up going to America for like 2 weeks, and I ended up staying for 2 years, non-stop, without having visited India back. A lot of clothes had to be bought and everything. It was winter time. So that's how I ended up in New York. But I've always made sure that I came to India every winter for the music season. And I played and, worked my way up the ladder, because Ravi Shankarji once told me, and this is really true, I would have to tell all aspiring musicians, that if you want to be a famous Indian musician anywhere in the world, you have to first be accepted by your own people here. If you are acknowledged and recognized as a musician of value in your country, the rest of the world would accept you anyway. So that's what I did. I was not a very well-known musician here, so I would come to India every winter, and I would try to find concerts to play. So the first year I came back after being away 2 years, people had forgotten me. Short memories, that does happen. And I got maybe 2 or 3 shows to play, because the musicians I used to play with were already playing with other tabla players. So I had lost, permanent jobs. But I did not despair, and I kept coming back every year. It took about 10, 12 years of coming back every year to re-establish that and to convince the organizers that he means to be back here every winter. Because they would never book me and say, well, we don't know if you're going to come back next year, so why should we? So that's how it used to be. So it all changed. I mean, you have to, in the world of business, provide consistently good product and create in the people's mind the idea of longevity, that you will be providing this day in and day out every year down the line, and that the product will improve, and improve. So then people will finally accept the fact that you are the one that you should look at and rely upon, and for the next best thing to come along. And so that's what it is.
Tabla has always been seen as in a company's form.
Yeah.
I think credit goes to you who converted
No.
transform.
No. The credit doesn't go to me at all. I reaped the harvest of the field that was planted by other masters. I'm telling you this. This is a fact.
But you transform that a company's form to the art form.
I don't know. I think the people say that I transformed it to a hair form. Something happened there. Wigs started appearing.
So how, can I ask you about your hair? Anything, tell us how you acquired
Well,
this
you know how it is.
Did you have this kind of style right from the beginning?
Well, you know the famous saying, hair today, gone tomorrow. So it has gone. But the fact is, you have to, nothing happens instantly. There has to be foundation laid. There has to be research put in. There has to be some sacrifices made to arrive at a point where people can say, okay, now we have a product that we can market. So there are people who do that. They slave through and come up with the idea. 1947 is when we got our independence, correct? Up till that point, Indian music mainly lived in the courts or in the havelis of the zamindars You must have seen Music Room, the great Satyajit Ray film. That was the norm. That's where it happened. Even up till recent time in Behala, there's a family in Behala who did concert festivals in their home. This year is the first year, today, in fact, there's a concert there where they are doing it in a hall. But up till then, it happened just in the houses. So the music stayed in the Maharaja's palace or the Nawab's domain or in the temples or wherever they need to be. They were in an intimate surrounding. After 1947, the musicians were left to fend for themselves. They were left with a product that they didn't know what to do with, how to market it. They had no clue because they were living in a haveli provided by the Maharaja, and gunny sacks full of rice and vegetables and ghee and whatnot, everything would come to the house, courtesy of the king, and they would be well provided for and nothing to worry about. And occasionally they'd be called upon to come and sing or perform, and that's that. So in the independence time, they suddenly were left with having to fend for themselves, having to find a way to be able to market this product, not just to the 50 or 75 or 80 connoisseurs who listen to them day in and day out in the palaces, but to thousands of people, and how to project this product out there. So who would do that? The old masters had no clue how to do it. As far as they were concerned, they would sit and play the music, and they expected the audience to know what was going on. Because the connoisseurs that they performed for every day knew what was going on. So there was no need to explain things. And therefore, there was a big divide, a big schism between the artists and the audience. And that had to somehow be narrowed. And so there were musicians like D.V. Paluskar, Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, Ustad Amir Khan Sahab, Amir by Karnataki, Begum Akhtar. There were names that appeared who found a way to be able to use other avenues to be able to become visible. Okay, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab popularized Thumri. Ka Karu Sajni Aina Balam was a big hit. Okay, Begum Akhtar, Koyaliya, Mat Kare Pukar. So many, D.V. Paluskar, Payori Maine Ram Ratan Dhan Payo. I mean, all these famous classical musicians found certain avenues, certain other tools to be able to project the art form to the masses. That's what happened. Then came the really well-organized younger musicians of that time. And who were they? Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Pandit Ravi Shankar, Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab, Ustad Amir Khan Sahab, Pandit Bhimsen Joshi and all. They are the ones who perfected the Indian music art projection as an entertainment art form, not as a connoisseur interaction, but as an entertainment art form. That began in the 50s. Till then, we had no clue what was going on. Tabla was still a second-hand profession, second-level profession in that world. It took the likes of the greats like Ustad Thirakwa Khan Sahab, Ustad Maseed Khan Sahab, Ustad Karamatullah Khan Sahab, Habibuddin Khan Sahab, Pandit Kanthe Maharaj, Pandit Kishan Maharaj, Pandit Shamta Prasad Ji, all these great electrifying magnetic personalities who performed tabla like a most wondrous thing that it ever was. They created the idea of interaction between two musicians. Teams appeared. Ravi Shankar, Allah Rakha. Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab, Pandit Kishan Maharaj. Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Pandit Shamta Prasad Ji, whatever. So there were these names who joined in. And suddenly an idea of Indian classical music being performed as an entertainment art form took hold. And there were these tabla players who created the art of tabla solo performance and started performing and playing and laying the foundation of this thing to be launched by the next generation, I happen to be in the middle of their generation and the next generation, simply because I started performing professionally when I was 12. And so I was playing concerts with Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasi, and all those guys when they were just starting as performers. But they were in their 20s and I was 12 or 13 or 14. So that's how I ended up reaping the harvest, or the, launching myself from all the work that these great musicians did. And all that great music started where? Right here in Kolkata. There were no big festivals anywhere else. There was one festival in Jalandhar called Harvallabh Festival. There was one festival in Delhi called Shankarlal Festival. There was no festival in Banaras. There were no festival in Bombay or anything of note that happened. This is where this idea of Indian classical music projected on stage as an entertainment art form was developed. And the audiences in Calcutta were the one who said yay or nay, what was good, what was not. And they acted as the blackboard to shout off. And what worked here was then displayed everywhere else in the world, everywhere else in the country. And so I cannot take credit. I really cannot. Well, all I can take credit for is making it a little bit more visible, by not playing tabla, but by selling tea. I mean, you have to do it some way, I mean, people used to tell me, why are you doing tea? Why are you doing all this? I mean, you're commercializing yourself. And for me, it was more like, I've got to do whatever I can to get the audience into the hall. Once they are there, it's up to me and the music that I play to convert them. But I've got to first bring them there. So that's where all the confusion, fusion, whatever else kind of started. We went to the laboratory. I don't know, I mean, I have to say, people tell me, fusion. Why, you're doing fusion, you are like the godfather of fusion. I feel like that I'm a lab rat or something. Fusion, it's a scientific word. It happens in science, fusion. Jugalbandi, fusion, what are these? As far as I'm concerned, these are words that are thrown around because people who throw them around have lack of better, language to best describe what we do. What we do is we interact, we converse as musicians. What I'm doing here with you is what I'll do with Sabir Khan on stage. We'll talk. We are not going to fight with each other. We are not going to jugalbandi. We are not going to do that. We are not Shikhar Dhawan. Whatever. But that's not what's going to happen. We interact. Fusion, there's no such thing. Fusion started 1,000 years ago. Did you know that? You didn't know that? Okay, I'll tell you. At the time of first invasions of the Islamic emperors, India was a land of Dhrupad Dhamar, one of the greatest form of music that ever is in India or anywhere else in the world. Dhrupad Dhamar, shlokas were being sung, Sanskrit was being honored. Bengali language has Sanskrit in it. I mean, Sanskrit was being honored. Dhrupad Dhamar was the language of the time, of music at that time. Then came the Muslim emperors, and they brought with them Sufis, who were very liberal-minded Muslims. They were not closed, they were not fanaticals. They believed in the oneness or the universality of humanity, that we are all one, that we have different names. Example, musicians are Sufis, Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab sang once Hari Om Tat Sat, a bhajan, and it became very popular at that time. So there was somebody who was interviewing him on the radio and said, Khan Sahab, you sang Hari Om Tat Sat, it became very popular, but you are a Muslim. How do you explain singing Hari Om? And he very simply said, Beta, ye to Khuda ka naam hai. It's a very important statement.
Great.
He said it's the name of God. It's the name of Allah. Somebody is saying Hari, I understand that. So I will sing it with the same feeling that I would if I sang Allah. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm singing the name of God. So that is Sufism. That is an important thing to remember. And that's what we were. We are all Sufis. The universality was what was in. So the Sufis came and they were totally taken by this form of classical music, Dhrupad Dhamar. They thought it was amazing, something fabulous, that these Tero Suvarna Kare, I mean, this is a line of a Dhrupad. They're talking about God. Jamuna ke tir, tum rahat ho. I mean, we're talking about Lord Krishna. So it's Dhrupad. And the maestro sang Dhrupad, singing praises of Almighty, of the Spirit. The Sufis related to that. And they took their form of doing the same thing, which was in those days called Kaul Kalbana. In this part of the world, it was Dhrupad, Prabandha Gaiki, Haveli Sangeet. In the Islamic world, it was Kaul and Kalbana, which is now popularly known as Qawwali. Kaul and Kalbana. So the Sufis like Amir Khusro took those two forms and found a way to be able to integrate them, mix them, make them work together. And there emerged a new style eventually, 100 years down the road, from that mix called Khayal. We know what Khayal is, right? Khayal is the premier in North Indian classical music form now. It is a secular form. It arrived from those two elements coming together, right? So that's where the fusion began, way back when, if you want to call it fusion. I just call it a natural process of integration that takes place. It's a conversation that happens that allows us to be able to speak differently. We wear suits, but we eat macher jhol, or chochori, or posto. We do that. But we don't call that fusion. Why not? It is. We are sitting here, we are Indians, where we are speaking English. That's fusion. But we don't call it fusion. But we'll call it in music. If a South Indian mirdangam player plays with a North Indian sitar player, that's fusion. Why? It's a natural process. It's what the world is becoming. It's becoming small. In the corporate world, it's the same thing. We have taken marketing ideas. We have taken packaging ideas. We have taken assembly lining in this part of the world from all over the world, and we've created a very thriving production level in this part of the world to measure up to anything that the rest of the world has to offer, be it making chips, microchips or whatever, or writing programs, or assembling Toyotas or Mercedeses or whatever or anything. It's all fusion. It's all fusion. So it's not just related to music alone. So that's one thing that I want to wipe clean off the slate. And of course, the other thing is that I am really not the godfather of fusion. Ravi Shankar ji started this long time ago. Before even him, Bollywood did this. Film industry in Bengal did it. They were using Western instruments and creating music for Indian films. That happened in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and so on. So the fusion was already, or whatever this was, taking place. It trained people like me to be able to go out in the world and work with musicians who are non-Indian musicians with the familiarity that was needed to be able to interact with them. And that came from working with Indian films. I played in Indian films. So, I started with a khanjiri player, tambourine. Then I went to bongos. Then I came to congos, finally graduating to playing tabla. That was the elite place in the rhythm section. Once you got to sit on the table with the tabla, you've arrived. You got 124 rupees for your day of work in those days. But it was amazing, and I tell you, it taught me how to interact with musicians from all over the world, because there in the front sat the strings, violin, violas, cellos, bass, everything. Over here was the horn section. Over here was bansuri, santoor, sitar, sarangi, dilruba, tar shehnai, whatever, over here on this side. Facing them were 4 tables, tabla, dholak, naal, khanjri wala, whatnot, and everything, and all over on this side, all 4. Each had 1 mic. And all those mics were going to 1 plug on the board. And there was a small little booth like this in which the singer would stand and sing. And we'd all had to play together. If one of us made a mistake, we had to stop and start all over again. And it was a process which was very hard to do, but that's where you learn. So that's where I learned to be able to interact with a saxophone player or a trumpet player or a cello player or a piano player or whatnot and everything. And so they say that I've made this happen, but not me. I learned under the guidance of Madan Mohan, Naushad Saab, Shankar Jaikishan, later on Lakshmi Pyare, R.D. Burman, S.D. Burman and whatnot. So, yeah.
You are talking about the fusion. Now...
Confusion.
Confusion. Now the algorithm-based music have been composed by computer,
Yeah.
LAMS. So do you visualize any jugalbandi with him? The computer?
Yeah, I have had time. I see that most of you people, when you're using your computer, you're talking to it, like as if it's alive. And I look at you and say, what's wrong with you? You're talking to a computer. You say, okay, come on. Why are you so slow? It's always a thing of speed. That's what happens with computer. Computer is a very, very important tool. Just like what's happened with companies, corporations, factories in India, you have modernized. And you've created an assembly line to keep up with the times. We don't have to make only 100 Fiats or 75 ambassadors in 6 months anymore, like we used to. It doesn't. We put 3,400 cars every week on the streets. That's what happens. You need computers. Similarly, the music needs computer simply because it allows me, the musician, or Mayuk here, another tabla player musician, to be able to create in your own living room a PowerPoint idea of what kind of a song you are creating. So that when you meet the musicians, you are able to turn the computer around, play it for them and say, this is the violin part, this is the flute part, this is the cello part, this is what the tabla is doing, this is what the singer has to do, etc., etc., etc. Rather than individually try to, and they can all get an email file, wave file of all this information, so they can arrive in a recording studio already prepared to do what needs to be done. It's being able to make the best use of your time. And so the computer allows you to do that. Computer allows you to foresee what your song is going to look like when it's finally done. What I have hesitancy about is being able to substitute computer sounds with real musicians. That's not what's happening. It's slowly coming back, but in the middle period, for the last maybe 15 years or so, the musicians were becoming obsolete because the computer was being allowed to give sample tones. I mean, I was talking to Shankar Mahadevan of Shankar Ehsan Loy, and I said, oh, that's a pretty good pattern, rhythm pattern. So who's playing it? And he said, Zakir bhai, I'm sorry to tell you, this is a loop, a computer loop that I've created. And I said, but why didn't you have a real person do it? And he said, because the director and the producers were happy with it. So that was it. So, and they needed it right away, so we just didn't get real musicians. So that's where it had arrived, where a real musician was being neglected, was being ignored. And I think that's slowly changing. They are starting to bring back the musicians because there's a certain warmth and certain nuance that the computer is not able to do. After all, it is not human. It is only a computer. So that has to go away. We need to arrive back at a good balance of working with the computer to create the project, create the file that's needed, so that the real musicians can then listen to it and at home and come prepared to be able to do it. So that's where it needs to go. In live music, the value of computer is enhanced further because you cannot bring on a tour 50 musicians that are going to play the music. You need to be able to still recreate that on stage. So what you end up doing is bringing, what do you call that? Huh? Playback tracks and stuff, so that you can use those with a few live musicians and create still the same effect of the concert that you need, that comes from listening to a song on the radio. So that's a good balance that is now being tried out.
Yeah. You said music is like conversation.
It is.
And tabla is a language.
It is.
So can I ask you to just convey in music the effect of demonetization? How the people are feeling the demonetization?
The demonetization is something that will definitely, the effects of which are, although on the decline, I believe so, are very difficult to put into musical tones because music only projects positive elements. I'm sorry, but you know, it's very interesting. Musicians say that music is supposed to represent all the 9 rasas, navrasas. So anger and ugliness and horror and romance, everything has to be. But I have noticed, and I don't know, maybe I'll be killed by an Indian musician spirit up there if I said that no, we don't. We don't convey all the 9 rasas. The music conveys mostly the positive rasas. If you listen to a musician, he'll say, I'm playing such and such raga, it represents peace, love, you know, all that stuff. They will rarely say they won't say it represents ugliness. Because how will you project that? You know, vibhatsa rasa. How will you do that? I mean, you know, audience hasn't come to listen to that. They've come to smile. They've come to hark back to a time where they were young and frolicking around Park Circus, you know, pretending not to hold hand but holding hands. Those were the days, you know, and they want to be able to relive that, and the music is supposed to convey that, not the ugliness of having to reach home and then have the parents get at them. So music is designed to project positive elements. I believe, sincerely believe, excuse me, that music or art of any source is one of the few positive elements left in this world. We go out, we breathe smog. Our cricketers are throwing up on the field of cricket because the air is bad. But we are still putting hundreds of cars on the road every week. We are still building factories that spew, all kinds of bad elements into our air. Our rivers are getting spoiled because the sewers have to be dumped into. Toxic elements are being thrown into our fields, going into our grounds, all sort of stuff like that's happening because it has nowhere else to go. That's what's happening. What's positive? When you hear Kishori Amonkar singing Maru Pranam, you can feel it. And it transports you to a different level from where you emerge from the hall, rejuvenated, recouping all the energy that you had to spend to be able to survive the day. So that's what I feel music is doing.
I'll ask one personal question. I heard that you married thrice. Is it like that?
Yeah,
Of course,
don't all
with the same
musicians
girl.
marry a few times? I mean, that's what I've been told. Musicians are like womanizers and whatnot and everything. That's what I'm told, but I mean, I have rarely seen that happen. The key word is rarely seen that happen. But anyway, yes, I married 3 times. But I married 3 times in the same year. Short marriages, huh? But to the same lady. It's amazing. I mean, so, our first marriage was the civil ceremony. So you went to the offices of the law and they, by law, pronounced you husband and wife. But then, my wife is a Catholic, by the way. So, in the name of the Father and of the Son. So, going to that Catholic school did pay dividends. So, my wife is a Catholic. So, her mother, who's, a church-going lady, wanted that there should be a church wedding. So we arrived in New York and we went to Bronxville Church in Westchester and we got married in a church. In those days, there were no issues about a Muslim walking the aisles up to the podium and being married by a Catholic church. No problems. We got married. But then my father and mother, well, we have to have a nikah, or else it's not done. I mean, you have to go around that flame 7 times or else you're not married. Never mind that you've signed the papers and all that, everything. So then the third marriage was the nikah. And that was a very interesting gathering. It was we had a very small 1-bedroom flat in those days. I'm talking 39 years ago. I've been married to the same lady for 39 years. 39 times 3. You know how many presents that is? I mean, no wonder I couldn't afford to buy a house for a long time. So, 39. Where was I? Oh, so Muslim wedding. We were living in a very small 1-bedroom home. So, in the living room, some mosque guy was found who could recite the Arabic words that needed to be recited. My father was giving me away. But my wife's family couldn't come from New York to San Francisco. So Ravi Shankarji gave Tony, my wife, away. So he acted as the elder. Ali Akbar Khan Sahab acted as a witness. Just imagine this. Ali Akbar Khan Sahab acted as a witness and sat in presence. Witness to all this was Pandit Nikhil Banerjee, Pandit Ram Narayan ji, imagine this, George Harrison, in my little living room. So that was the nikah that happened. It had a whole variety of people. And so that's how come we ended up with 3 marriages: August, September, and November. I won't tell you the dates. Got to keep something to myself, right? So yes, 3 times I got married to the same lady in the same year. And believe me, every year it's very difficult to get a bouquet of flower and try to find something, some new way to say, you know, the same old shit. Believe me, it's not easy to, you know, to make it sound like wow, you know, and she looks at it and say, oh, how nice. And you know, she's saying, why did he have to do that? Anyway, and then the presents and all come out, so there.
Today, I think City of Joy is City plus Joy. Because of the paucity of time, I think I have many questions, but I have got an indication that we need to listen to your music also.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people will be they are ready to listen to you for a longer time. But thank you very much, sir, for sparing your time and for being with us. I'll just request you to please tell us what is Padhant when you perform, please. This is what I would request you to please let us know.
Okay.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Sir.
Well, yeah, I guess I have to play. Why does this say 1? 0, 0, 0. Computers. Okay. Can you read what? Do you have the screen on the other side? Okay, so you don't know what this is, right? This is Presence LIC Life Insurance Corporation of India presents Spotlight Session Masterclass with the legend Ustad Zakir Hussain. I thought I was the only one who's supposed to know this. This is what you're doing, Mr. Hussain. Keep that in mind. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir,
My
for being with
pleasure.
us.
Mr.
Thanks a lot.
Sharma,
Thank you.
A.K. Sharma
Thank
from
you.
LIC.
I'll request you to give Ustad Sahab a big round of applause.
They just did.
Yes, standing ovation, please.
No, please, please. Please.
Thank you.
Okay, so since you've got up, I presume you're ready to leave, right? You sure about this? Thank you. Oh my God. Okay.
Please, sir.
I mentioned so much about Ali Akbar Khan Sahib. He's been the biggest influence in my life. She is Ali Akbar Khan Sahib's granddaughter, Raki. I have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, it is really with pride that I must introduce to you somebody who's going to play with me. One of the finest young musician of our country. India is now blessed. The next generation, or the bench strength of our music, is really top class, real high shelf. And you know, you were talking about I've made tabla very popular and all that and everything. I have to say that there's one saying, every dog has his day, correct? So that's what's happening with me. I am having my day. I'm the dog today. So every dog has his day. And therefore, his name appears in the marquee places and people say, oh, tabla, yes, Zakir Hussain. But that's so wrong. That is very wrong. I have to tell you, I'm not the best tabla player in the world. It is the truth. It is a fact. I'm not the best tabla player in the world. I'm one of the good ones, but I'm not the best tabla player in the world. At least in Kolkata alone, there's at least 10 or 12 tabla players who are just as good as me, if not better on their day. It is a fact. And what I would like, if anybody is here from the media, to do is to dig deeper Don't just go with the marquee name alone. Don't just say, oh, Sarod, okay, let's hear Amjad Ali Khan Sahab, or Santur, let's hear Shiv Kumar ji, or flute, let's hear Hari Prasad Chaurasia ji, and so on. Go deeper and see who else is around, who's good, because there are great players. Rakesh Chaurasia is one of the finest bansuri player in the world. Niladri Kumar, Purbayan Chatterjee, these are Kushal, Bose, these are sitar players of great note, of top shelf quality, who don't get their moment in the sun because someone else who's very well known is getting that. So keep that in mind. So this instrument was dying. People rarely heard it on the stage. It's called sarangi. It's one of the great instruments of our country. And it took incredible amount of work, unrecognized work, by people like Pandit Ram Narayan, and then later on Ustad Sultan Khan Sahab, to really bring it back onto the stage to a point where now many young players are playing it and playing it well. And so Ustad Sultan Khan, like me, I sold tea to become visible and popular. He sang songs like Piya Basanti Re. You remember that? Yeah. Yeah. Albela Sajan Ayo. So many great songs that he sang and became popular. But he was one of the greatest sarangi player ever. And so I have his son, Sabir Khan, who's going to play with me. Sabir Khan. Huh? What? Oh, he's reminding me I have to put this in the... So, it's okay. Don't worry about the margins. So I should speak in this and turn this off? Okay. So first you're going to hear a very ancient Chinese classical piece called Tuning. And then we will start. You know, tuning is a very important part of Indian classical music. To the point that it is actually woven into the performance. Indian musician tunes before performing, during the performance, and out of habit, even after the performance. Yeah, I've seen musicians, instrumentalists, tune their instrument before putting it away. It's like, oh, we have to tune it. So that's what happens. Tabla is a young instrument. Has only become well known in the last, say, about 125 years. So it's one of the youngest instruments in the music form that has existed for over 2,000 years. So it is still finding its way in this tradition. So a lot of the repertoire that is played in tabla comes from the Pakhavaj syllables. And also a lot of the compositions that are played on tabla are also taken from Pakhavaj. For some reason, most of the compositions or qaidas that were developed in tabla repertoire were developed in a rhythm cycle known as teen tal, 16 beats. So, and then the tabla players who had to play in other rhythm cycles took those main compositions from the 16-beat cycle and created hybrids to fit, cut and paste into other rhythm cycles. So as you can see, computer works here and here. Cut and paste all the compositions. So teen tal is the source of many of the stuff that happens in other rhythm cycles. Sabir Bhai will play the lehra and also some other elements. We will kind of develop both rag and tal on a parallel level. He's a very busy artist. He has to play in Udaipur tomorrow. So he has a 1:30 or 1:45 a.m. flight. So one of the great boons of the digital world is that now we have an ancient instrument that most Indian classical musicians use. It's called Tanpura app. It's true, now all these very serious Indian classical musicians, they will come on the stage and turn on their Tanpura app and then tune their instruments and everything and then start performing. Once it happened, and the musician had forgotten to put it on airplane mode. So, and then the phone rang, of course, in the middle. So we'll begin a short performance. He will start with the introduction of Rag Maru Bihag. Since we were talking about rasa, it's a very romantic raga. So, and he'll do a short introduction and then we'll begin the rhythm cycle and see where it leads to. Okay? Thank you. That's not Maru Bihag. 4 sections, I feel, in the repertoire of tabla, as far as performing is concerned. Acha, can I request you something, guys and girls? I'm here, right here. I'm not there on the screen. The reason why I'm saying that is, if I'm looking at you in your eyes, and you're looking there, we are not connecting. You understand that, don't you? So there are 4 sections. The opening section is known as Peshkar. It's a Persian word which means to present your work. It comes from the palaces. In the beginning of the day, when the king sat down, there used to be an order, Peshkar ko pesh karo. So the Peshkar would come and he would tell what was going to happen through the day, the activities of the day, the administrative things and all that. So that was Peshkar. So the rhythm players invented their own introduction of the repertoire and called it Peshkar, presenting their work. And then came the playing of many themes and variations. So the themes were composed, the variations were invented on the spot, and those themes were known as Qaeda. Nothing to do with Al-Qaeda and all that stuff, just plain Qaeda. And which were mainly tables. And we learned our vocabulary accordingly. So the Qaidas were created on many different things people saw in the nature. So one of those is this, because it's a recent invention, tabla. This kind of represents the rhythm of a train, how it leaves the station and develops its way all the way through to the next station.
This composition is called Lal Kila. The reason why it's called Lal Kila, as I understand it, is because in the old days, at the Red Fort, outside the Red Fort, on the top of the big door sat a big guy with a drum. Not the big guy, but the drum was big. And his duty was to announce the arrival and departure of the friendly and unfriendly friends. And so one of those days, one of the court drummers was kind of inspired by it, and just to imitate that action, that court drummer created a composition. So the action of the drummer playing, and then it was called Lal Kila. So that's what it says. Sharma Sahib asked me a question about Padhant. What is Padhant? Well, the word comes from the Hindi or Urdu word padhna, to speak, or to read. So when we were taught compositions, we were not told to write things down. We had to learn orally. It was an orally passed tradition. So I remember I was 7 years old when my father first started to teach me. And the teaching began after he asked me one night at dinner, he said, "Do you want to seriously learn this?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, tomorrow we start." So tomorrow was at 3 o'clock in the morning. That night, so at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up and he started singing or reciting the same syllables in my ear out in the open, and I had to recite back to him. So that's padhana, to read what your guru or teacher is reading to you. You read back, padhana. So on that word, all the compositions are actually in a matter of just slang called padhant. Ye ek padhant suniye, meaning listen to this recitation. But those are compositions. So tabla is an expressive instrument, so it tells you stories and things about what's going on. So I must tell you that I could have sent you this invitation for today's gathering in a tabla composition. You wouldn't have had to buy, register or anything. I could have just done that. So if I was to tell you, please come, have a little snack, have a drink, sit down, relax, listen to the concert and everything, and then go home, how would I tell you that in tabla? So composition, if just recited, wouldn't mean much to you. Now this is a composition. But if I told you just relax. Listen to the concert, and then you go home. Simple thing. So another tabla player would understand that. Composition. But now a scenario appears to describe the composition. So we were talking while we were sitting in the beige room, because it's not green, how well the city of Calcutta has managed to figure out traffic in this. Flyovers and things have emerged, and now it's become easier and easier and shorter time wise to go from point A to point B. No such luck in Mumbai. We have flyovers which don't over. They just, they under. So this composition gives you a kind of an idea of what the traffic is like. Now, as you know, in India, on highways or roads, the big guy dictates how the traffic moves. So it's a big truck or a big bus or whatever. The way that's moving, everything else has to work around it. So here's the big guy setting up the tone. This in India is considered straight. Straight. Now in return, on the Santa Cruz highway in Mumbai, the auto rickshaw and the scooters and the nanos and all, they have to go around that bus or truck. Taddi kiti taddi kiti taddi kiti taddi kiti takiti 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 takiti, all around. Then on the streets there are people like me and you who need to cross the road. Why? They don't know. They just need to cross the road. And crossing the road is okay, but what is important is crossing the road at the very last possible second. So you see the truck coming and you wait, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I, and just when the truck is like within breathing distance, you dash across to the other side and you've made it. It's adrenaline thing, you know, and you made it and okay, I'm fine. But I've had that rush, because having played a game of sort. So that has another rhythm. So taddi kiti taddi kiti taddi kiti taddi kiti takiti 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 takiti. Crossing. As soon as you reach at the other end, you see one of the most majestic sight in India, elephant, Lord Ganesha, walking down, and Lord Ganesha's followers, dogs, cats, goats and all behind. So they all have their different rhythm. Ganesha has his own different rhythm. Taddi kiti taddi takiti 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 dhirigdigadak dhirigdigadagda dagina dagatete tagina dagatete dagina dagatete tagina dagatete. Ganeshji. Didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti, the little ones. And then this is all coming together at that little junction up there where the signal is not working. Just going to be a traffic jam. Gridlock, traffic jam, time for Taj tea. So the whole composition, taddi kiti taddi kiti takiti 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 dhirigdigadak dhirigdigadagda dagina dagatete tagina dagatete didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti didi takiti dadigintaranada dhirigdigadagda dadigintaranada dhirigdigadagda dadigintaranada dhirigdigadagda. Top, as you know, is cannon. When it's fired, it makes a huge noise and does a lot of damage. So first you describe the top, what it does and what it needs to make the sound, and then you make the sound. So the big nozzle, wheels. Gotta have a flint as well. So the cannonball, the powder, the flint. The noise of the sound. Rela comes from the word rail, which was the inspiration for rhythm players inventing something fast to play. So on the word rail, it was called Rela. So there are many such Relas. This particular one gives you an impression of the coaches, the rhythm of the coaches, the steam engine, you know, and maybe even the whistle. way, when the rain falls, that's also known as Rela. So a little bit of that. Now, where it's raining, there are dark clouds, rain clouds, which means something serious is going on. Now, I can't show you the dark clouds, but I can give you what the feeling might be. Lightning. Sabir Khan. Thank you very much. You've been very kind to us, very patient with us. Thank you. Have a good night's rest.
Thank you very much, Ustad Zakir Hussain Saab. Once again, a huge round of applause for Ustad Zakir Hussain Saab. You have left us breathless. You have left us breathless. And thank you, Sabri Khan ji. Thank you very much. May I request Mr. Didi Purkasta, Managing Director and CEO, ABP Private Limited and Chairman INFOCOM, to kindly come forward and present a memento to both our Ustads. Ladies and gentlemen, Ustad Zakir Hussain Saab, a huge round of applause for such an amazing performance. Thank you very much, sir, for being here with us. Also, we'd like to felicitate Sabri Khan ji. And here is Mr. Didi Purkasta felicitating Sabri Khan ji. Thank you very much for this wonderful performance. I will request Mr. Didi Purkasta to say a few words.
Nothing to be said after this beautiful performance by Ustadji. I'd just like to announce the next year's INFOCOM dates. INFOCOM 2018 is happening on 6th, 7th and 8th December 2018. Thank you very much.